Welcome to this video trip report of the Illinois River. The flow is 2100 CFS on this day, and throughout the trip it dropped to 1500 CFS. And here we are going by Panther Creek. That's Panther Creek coming in on the right. And this to me is where the rapids sort of start. There were some rapids upstream above here. We've probably been on the water for like an hour and a half, maybe less. But this is sort of the first warm-up rapid. And although the flow at Kirby was 2100 CFS, it felt much bigger to me. It felt like similar trips at like 2800 CFS, maybe a little bit bigger. And that can happen on the Illinois River because the gauge is so far upstream, depending on what the side creeks are doing. There's two major creeks between the gauge and here, Josephine Creek and Big Briggs Creek. And when we passed Briggs Creek about 20 minutes before this moment, it was pumping. It was really big. And this trip was after a recent rainstorm. So even though the gauge says a flow, it can actually feel and be much bigger once you get down to the rapids, or lower, vice versa. And so not all flows are the same. I'm just giving you the flow just so you have some basic judge. But please don't think that just because you go at 2100 CFS, it's going to look like this, because it's probably going to look a little bit lower. And for this rapid, these Panther Creek rapids, at this flow, they're actually a little bit easier. It's a little bit washed out. There's more lines. The river's wider. And so you'll see downstream there's a couple of holes that in the later rapids you have to miss. But I felt like this first part was pretty easy. At lower flows, it's technical. It's rock dodging, missing stuff, and I could warm up. At this flow, it kind of bouncing down and going through some of these small holes. Not a big deal. The next one, we're still in the Panther Creek Rapids. You'll see this big boulder coming up, and I like to go just right of it because I think it's interesting to go right of it, but it's actually a little bit easier to go left of it generally. But I like to kind of push into this eddy, take my time, and get a good scout downstream. And at different flows, there's a variety of holes down there. So I like to look and kind of see if I can point out the holes and sort of make my way between the holes. And I know there's a hole on the left here, so I'm going to make a strong move to the right and try to miss it. And there's a nice right line here that kind of covers up things that are some obstacles that are there at lower water. But this is something I did from just taking a quick boat scout to see what was going on. You'll notice I'm looking back a lot. You'll see that throughout the video. That's just me looking back to see if there's any swimmers so I can be good downstream safety. And I don't have downstream safety, so I'm running very conservative lines today. Coming up next is Labrador Creek Rapid. And it could just be the fourth Panther Creek Rapid because we're so close. But you'll see right there on the left, Labrador Creek comes in from the left. And this is a pretty cool rapid, similar to the other ones. Again, at different flows, there's different rocks, there's different holes. And depending on your abilities to boat scout or scout in general, this is worth taking a look at because there's a few places in this one you can get into some trouble. But really lots of fun. And below here is Gnome Creek Rapid. I didn't take a video of that one today. And a couple other rapids. And the next big one, though, is Rocky Top. And this, to me, is one of the most dangerous, if not the most dangerous rapid on the river. There's a big undercut rock in the middle. And I'm always going to take a far right conservative line. You can miss the rock, the dangerous rock, in most flows by just taking a very technical, difficult line down here on the right. And so I'm generally going to be looking out for that rock. There's the Rocky Top right in front of me now. You can see it there on the left. And I'm just going to take this little channel. Not too difficult, this flow. Actually, at these higher flows, it's pretty easy to miss it. But, like the 1200 flows, 900 flows, it gets a little dicey over there. And again, there's a few more rapids and some time. And now we're getting into York Creek Rapids. This is a beautiful set. Kind of challenging. And I don't know, every time I'm entering this rapid, like right now, I'm just so excited because it's a really interesting one. It's a beautiful part of the canyon. And, the one thing is you come in with this right to left momentum, and there's typically a hole on the left. So the key here, in my opinion, do whatever you want, I'm just going to give you my opinion, is to dump momentum. You can see I'm pulling really hard to dump all that momentum and get to the right. There's generally sort of a tongue over on the right, and that left side can have a little hole. And that sets you up nicely for the bottom part, which is generally wave trains, sometimes a hole. You can see that water coming in from the right. There is a sneak line sometimes where you just kind of like skip all that stuff I just did and bounce down those rocks on the right. but it's such an interesting rapid. I just love doing it. And just good, clean fun here. Next up is a rapid called Wall Banger because it wants to shove you into the wall on the left. That's the name that we've given it, the name that we use. Its official name is rapid number 23, which is a cool number because that was Michael Jordan's number. So if you want to use the book, rapid number 23, we just use the term Wall Banger number 1. At lower flows, it shoves you into that wall and it can flip a boat, which would be a super bummer because Clear Creek is just downstream, and this is a pretty significant rapid. This is where I've seen the most flips personally because people underestimate it and can't really see where to go. If you look down there, you can see Clear Creek cascading down from the right, which is really cool. And in this rapid, at some flows, in the flow we're at today, there's a big pour-over hole on the left. And so the general line is right at higher flows. It's not a big deal if this flow as long as you're right. But at some flows, there's some rocks on the right that come out of the water that boats can ride up on and flip on. So you have rocks you can flip on and a hole you can flip on, and you have to thread the needle between the two. So at this flow, it's pretty forgiving. I was able to just take the whole right side this whole time, and I got a little sideways in a smaller hole at the bottom here. You can see I hit it a little bit weird, but came out fine. Those aren't really big holes, but you can see that one on the far left right there is a pretty nasty pour over, and I've seen flip gearboats before, so I'm pretty careful when we get to Clear Creek. So below here is a few more rapids and something called the Boat Eater right by Pine Flat that I didn't get video of. But we camped at Pine Flat, which is a great spot to camp. And here's the next Wall Banger number 2. This one's just a bit downstream from Pine Flat. And again, it wants to really shove you into that wall on the left. At this flow, it's pretty easy to miss. But again, at some flows, it's really hard to miss. And I just put my bow on it and bounce off of it usually. But not like a really big deal. And the rest of the day, there's some more class 2s and 3s. And the next significant rapid is rapid number 51. It doesn't have a cute name yet, just rapid number 51. And it kind of comes up on you quick. There's this boiling water and kind of interesting current above. And I've seen it look very different at different flows. Today, there's a big hole on the left. But some weeks, the left is the line. So this is one where you want somebody up front that can boat scout really well and make some good decisions. But really cool rapid that you see somewhere downstream of Pine Flat. There's not a lot of great camping after Pine Flat, and so we do 4-day trips there typically, so we like to camp just above Greenwall somewhere, and DEADMANS Bar is a good place. It's just a really hard carry up to it, tricky eddy to catch, but if you do want to camp there, it's a great camp. It sets you up beautifully for what I call Greenwall Day, which is when you run most of the big rapids. And this is the first one. This is just past a place called South Bend, where I like to regroup. Some people call it Pink Rock because there's a big pink rock. I call it South Bend because that's what it is on the maps. And Prelude's a good warm-up. It's like, okay, I see what's going on. This is also called Fawn Falls. And so if you look in the handbook to the Illinois River, there's a really cool story about why it's called Fawn Falls. But this historically is either called Prelude or Fawn Falls. And I like this little left chute. But it's a little juicy for paddle boats, and so at this flow, there's a really nice straightforward line on the right side, which is where I send the paddle boats, just so they don't have to deal with that pretty big hole. And just below Prelude or Fawn Falls is the big one, Greenwall, and this is definitely one that I think should always be scouted. It changes at every different level; it looks different. And to have a good safety plan for it, because it's long and a lot of stuff can go wrong in this rapid. There's a lot of challenging places at different flows. And I'm taking my traditional line today, which is coming down the top part. And people call this top part Prelude, but this is actually just the top of Greenwall. This is not Prelude. This is the beginning of Greenwall. Prelude was the rapid before that's also called Fawn Falls. Anyway, there's that little drop there. You have to miss a little hole here at most flows. And I'm kind of getting down to the part that makes most people nervous. And I'm pretty conservative boater, especially because I'm the lead boat right now. If I swim, there's not a lot of safety for me. So I really like taking these far left doors. And so there are some lines down the middle, but man, you could get in some trouble. So I'm always going to choose the more difficult, technical, safer line. And again, this is a difficult line, but I feel like the consequence of a mistake here is just getting stuck, which is, you'll see, is what I do, what we all do. There's not a lot of water coming through here, but I'd much rather be here swimming with people on shore than going down the middle and risk a flip or just a really exposed swim. So there is a line through here if you hit it just right. I did my best and got a little bit stuck, and I try to quickly get it off, but there's a boat behind me, and they choose to take the next door over, and get a little stuck there too. So we're both stuck in this rapid, which, as long as we're not swimming, I'm pretty happy right now. And especially if there's no other boats coming downstream. And this deserves its own video to talk about. I'm not going to talk about it here, but basically we use a rope to kind of pull this boat a little bit to help them get off, and allowed them to come off that, get ahead, make some moves. And while I'm videoing, I'm taking some photos here. I have my good camera. My boat comes unstuck on its own. You can see it's kind of moving a little bit, and just with the surges in water, and unexpectedly comes unstuck. So I put my camera away as best I can, and I get to row the rapid. And my choice is to, right now, pull and go hard right. Go right of all of this stuff. This boat's pretty heavy, so I can't quite do it, or I'm also weak. So one of those two things is the case, or both. I don't make this full pull all the way to the right, which is my goal. And I have to go into this mess. And I don't like going in this mess. There's a lot of places here you can wrap and flip, and there's a sieve down here you don't want to swim, but it does go. It's just not my ideal choice. But it goes fine. It's a way to go through. I've seen a lot of boats very, very, very stuck in there, and so I'm going to try to avoid that again. And there is a little sieve in there. The end of green wall can have a big hole. Also, there's that wall, but it can have a big hole you want to try to avoid. This level is flushed out, and so just the big hazards at the bottom are, if it's lower and there's a hole, watch out for it, and try not to get slammed into that big wall. I just hit it my oar on it a little bit, but boats hit it fully sideways sometimes, and it's pretty violent. So next is little green wall, and honestly, little green wall causes more problems than green wall. And I think it's partly because it's not scattered very often, and partly because it's just hard, and it doesn't have a really clean move. So the entrance is pretty straightforward, I think. The key is setting yourself up for the bottom. And it is scoutable, and so if you can, pull over, take some time to scout it if you don't know where you're going, because going into this blind could be pretty messy. And the entrance is pretty straightforward. That hole on the right was pretty big at this level. I try to get right here and drive left as soon as I can. So you can see I'm right. I'm pulling left. This hole is pretty nasty on the far left side. So I try to miss the far left side and pull and pull and pull. And there's some waves to surf on and some pillows, and try to get left. There is a line right of that rock, but it can be pretty troublesome. Or if you went over that rock, it could be a problem too. So the hard part is that rock at the bottom. So there's a few more rapids that are really cool. I didn't get video of them. And now we're at Rapid 103. This one is completely unnamed. Super cool rapid though, just really interesting. And someday somebody will come up with a cutesy name for rapid number 103. Next up is Holy Poly. This is a rapid that looks really different at a lot of different flows. Sometimes I enter from the right. Today I'm entering from the left. Sometimes I go down the middle. I kind of make a decision every time based on what I see. There are a lot of lines, but there's also a lot of holes, and at lower water, a ton of weird rocks. So this is one to take pretty seriously if you can. It can be boat scattered pretty well. And today there's a big hole down here on the right that I just didn't have enough momentum to miss. And so I got to go right through it, which was kind of a fun treat, I guess. And finally, the last big rapid is the famous submarine hole. This is a big rapid, and it looks so different at different flows. Today, most of the river had a hole at the top you had to miss on the right, and then you have to get pretty hard left to miss a big pour-over hole at the bottom. This rapid looks, every time I come here, it's different, because every time the flow is different. It's really hard to know what you're getting into. But generally, I start right and go left, and just deal with different obstacles as I get down. So that's the end of the major rapids that I videoed, but just want to make a few comments before I close this video up. And I have a few more minutes of just like fast forward or a sped up video from here down. I left my GoPro on for another 20 minutes and condensed it down to like 4, I think, so you can see more of the canyon if you want. But just a couple thoughts. This trip started at 2100 CFS on the Kirby gauge, finished at 1500. This day, I think it was 1600, 1650. But it felt like previous trips I did at 2200. And so the Kirby gauge is pretty far upstream, and the exact flow depends on the side creeks, and there's no real way to know other than just go. So please know, anytime you do an Illinois trip, it's variable depending on snowpack, recent rain, how much water is in the soil. It's so complicated. You're not going to know exactly what you're going to get. So you want to be good boaters. And also the flow can change really quickly. If a storm had come in and it started raining, we had very saturated soil, the river would have come straight up and been potentially super dangerous. And so please know, any Illinois trip, you want to be really careful to look at potential spikes in water flow. And, if you put on at 2,000, you want a team that can maybe handle it at 4,000 just in case. Unless the forecast says 100% chance of sun every day. But even then, the weather can be weird down here. So anyway, just want to say, please be careful when you put on. This river can spike really fast and can be very dangerous at higher flows. And I just urge everybody who does the Illinois, consider taking more time. Consider spending, 3 days, 4 days, 5 days, and get to know the canyon. There's not a ton of hikes, but there's a few hikes. There's tons of wildflowers, plural. The rocks you can see right there, if you just walk up in the rocks and look around, you'll see rare and endangered flowers. I mean, the serpentine soil is really cool. And this is just a place I think should really be enjoyed slowly instead of rushing down as fast as you can just for the whitewater. It does have great whitewater, but to me, what's really special about it is the clear water, the scenery, the botany, being in this place, time with friends. So you do whatever you want, but this is a place I feel like can really be enjoyed by people who just love being outdoors in special places. So enough of that. Thanks for watching. And yeah, please, if you have a second, hit the like button. If you've made it this far, thank you. Hit the like button, comment, do all the things, ask questions. I'll do my best to answer them. And yeah, I'll see you next time. Thanks.